right, everybody. Thank you so much for logging in for another live stream here at and Ask Me Anything at We the Governed. And let me just see if I can make sure I get my setup going there. So just a quick reminder, this is an Ask Me Anything live stream. And if you're logging in on Tuesday, shortly around 6 o'clock or so, it means you're actually watching me live, and which also means that if you want to ask me any questions, you can do so. Just don't forget to use the at We the Governed so that I can distinguish the question that you might be asking versus commentary back and forth. Nothing wrong with the commentary, but it's always a little bit easier for me to pick out your questions if I can see that you've asked one. And oftentimes, by the time the show progresses further, becomes difficult for me to dig out any of those or find your questions in amongst the other comments there. So again, this is us in our studio. We've got, I should say me at this point in time. I'm kind of alone in the studio tonight, but hopefully not alone with all of you logging in and getting a chance to ask your questions. And no guarantees that I'm going to have an answer that you like or even have the ability to answer it, but I will do my best. And if I can't answer it, I will do so, let you know that I can't. And then just another quick message to point out, as you put your questions in the comment section, which is either going to be depending on what type of device you have there or down below, type it in. When it comes up, I'm generally going to try to answer the questions in the order in which they're posted. If I skip over your question, it's not on purpose. Sometimes it's a little hard for me to pull them out. People sometimes misspell We the Governed when they type in the at We the Governed, so sometimes I don't catch it in the list of other comments that are popping up. But I will do my best if you are able to put those questions in and post them accordingly. Now, for those of you who were at the Roanoke Conference this last weekend, thank you so much for coming up and saying hi. I enjoyed visiting with many, many people there. I'm sure many of you watching this video right now, some of you were probably there as well. And as I've frequently said, I've been on this. This was my last year to be on the Roanoke Conference as a board member, but I do anticipate participating in future conferences, more in kind of the program side of things. The theory at Roanoke is that if you're on the board, it is not a self-promotion vehicle, so it isn't for you to be involved. You're there to organize a conference and make sure it goes off smoothly, not to promote yourself and in the agenda or program. So I want to be a little bit more involved in the program and possibly see if I can kind of coordinate a little bit more training programs for future Roanokes if I can. So nevertheless, that was a great opportunity to be around 500-600 other people who are interested in the same issues that you and I are, and meet together all at one time, usually on a rainy weekend out at Ocean Shores. This weekend was unusual because it was beautiful out there. It was cold but very sunny, and we really did have a lot of opportunities to network and chat. I know I had a lot of great meetings while I was out there, so that was a very fun time to do that. And I really did enjoy all the conversations that I had with people, and I'm sorry if I didn't get a chance to meet with everyone who wanted to meet there at the conference, but it always ends up being a good time. The program itself went well, and we'll just have to see what next year's like. And if you missed it this year, I do encourage you to go next year. It'll probably be even larger. It usually seems to be right after an election cycle like this. And boy, are we going to have an interesting election cycle coming up nationally, as well as, at least I believe anyway, at the state level, there's going to be quite a few issues there as well. Now, one thing is, before I jump into some of these questions, and I do see a number of things popping up here in the question area first. I have tried to at least provide a couple of calendaring items if you want to just come up and say hi or meet me, either events I'm speaking at or that I'm somewhat involved in. I'll just give you over the next couple weeks a sense of those, because I know I had a bunch of events that we just finished up over the last 2 weeks. There were 2 different Doge training classes. I believe one at least since the last live stream that I had, the one out in Burien, which was well attended. Again, I had a chance to actually meet my fourth grade Christian school teacher while I was there, which was really fun. Obviously, I hadn't seen her in decades, and I can't believe she even recognized me. But it was really fun for her to come up and to chat with me. And then, of course, many other good people that were there, people who are focused on trying to expose the truth about what's going on with our tax dollars. And as you expose the truth, it doesn't mean the truth is very pretty. It is not. It is ugly. They waste your money and squander every opportunity they get. But nevertheless, at least finding out what's happening to it, I think there's some value in learning basic skills and knowing how to kind of go down that road. And I think the Doge training classes are going to be important for that. I don't have a list of the next series of classes right now. One of the things that I'm trying to do is lay out some more work session type classes where we go through some case studies of things that people have uncovered in Washington State, how they got there, what the records were that they used to get that level of fraud or corruption or incompetence, and how you can use similar techniques and strategies to uncover that stuff where you live as well. Don't worry, you're not going to run out of potential opportunities. Corruption and incompetence infest government at all levels in Washington State, actually pretty much any state. And if you're watching this, I don't care what state you think you live in, and you think it's probably pure as the driven snow, you're wrong. It's corrupt too. It's just a matter of whether anybody's bothering to look or watch. So I think that training more people to be able to do that is very important, and Washington State has lots of opportunities for that. The next event, I am bouncing around the state quite a bit right now, mostly meeting with whistleblowers and some other activists. But I do have, I will be at the February 3rd Let's Go Washington Pie Crust Rally to support the initiatives on Tuesday, February 3rd at 2:30 p.m. So I know it's in the afternoon. If you have to work for a living, that's going to be a pretty tough time. But if you're retired, if you're in the area, or you're taking some time off to come down and see the circus in Olympia, that's going to be a great opportunity to come there. They're saying to bring your pie tins. No more flaky promises from the Washington State legislature. And of course, they are flaky and corrupt. So I anticipate more flaky promises from the Democrats, certainly in charge. But that is an opportunity to meet with other people. There will be a rally there. I know Brandy Cruz is speaking. I know Brian Haywood's going to be speaking. There'll be a number of other people there who probably feel the same way you do. There'll be a bunch of student athletes, female student athletes who have been impacted by the state's basic support and certainly OSPI support for putting boys and girls sports. And also there'll be a number of educators and teachers there who want to restore parental transparency that the state absolutely doesn't want to do. Certainly Bob Ferguson and Nick Brown and that crew, they want to hide as much information from you as they possibly can if you are a parent and have kids in public school. The next event that I'll be at for sure is going to be the February 11th. That's Wednesday. This one's close to home, unusually close to home. This is the Thurston County. They're calling it PCO training, but and that's going to be at 6 p.m. So that's Wednesday, February 11th, Thurston County PCO training is what they're calling it, 6 p.m. at the South Union Grange on Tilley. That's actually fairly close to where I live in South Thurston County. So this is mainly going to be, I'm planning to do a training program for, it's not just for PCOs, it's really for anybody who wants to be involved on the kind of conservative side of the political spectrum in your community, which means the sane world of actually trying to hold government accountable and trying to teach activists as well as PCOs, just other things that you can do to be engaged and involved in the process. For precinct committee officers, being a PCO itself is not an end-all be-all. Teaching people how to investigate local problems in government, how to participate in the public hearings, how to pay attention to what's going on with local government, and how to set up alternative news sites and feeding this information out to a wider audience. That'll be some of the topics that we cover, but it'll be interactive as always whenever I do these programs. I'm expecting people to bring questions and have it be fairly interactive. The next Wednesday after that, which is Wednesday, February 18th, I'm going to be up at this is up in King County. I'll be at the Women of Washington as a speaking engagement up there. The title of it's going to be the State of the State. That's at the Medina Golf and Country Club. That's a paid event that you would want to, you'd have to pay to go there. And it's relatively expensive as far as these events go, and probably not a surprise if you're at the Medina Golf and Country Club. If you're a member of Women of Washington, it looks like it's $100 to go go there. It's 150 if you are not, but that is February 18th, and I believe it's 5:30 to 9 p.m. That's as far out as I'll go in the schedule. There's plenty of other events that I'll be doing later on in March and even later in February, I believe, but I don't have some of these dates confirmed. I know I am working on definitely a Doge Washington training program out in Spokane, one up in Whatcom, and most likely one down in Clark County again as well. And again, I might try to model this a little bit more on those of you who attended the Gig Harbor event, where we're looking at a little bit with a little bit more time and a little bit more methodical on some of the historical efforts recently in the last year of things that have been uncovered and what previously trained Doge activists have uncovered when they've looked into fraud or the possibility of fraud or how your money's being squandered and wasted throughout Washington state. So there's a lot of opportunities that we have here. So the Doge Washington training will be coming up, and I'll probably be talking about some of that next week. Now, if you noticed the Let's Go Washington event on Tuesday at 2:30 p.m., I think I'm probably going to end up having to do my live stream next week on that Monday, the February 2nd, simply because I'm not totally sure that by the time the event gets over in Olympia that I can make it back down to Clark County where I have my studio and still be able to do the live stream in this studio here. So at this point in time, I'm kind of planning to do the live stream next week on Monday. Well, that's enough for calendaring, and let's jump into this. I do want to make a point, and actually I'm just going to play this as a quick reminder so that people who have not seen this before, just a quick reminder if you haven't. I have obviously been focusing on some of the efforts by Washington state government, particularly our elected leaders, but also with the bureaucrats that they're kind of protecting there, and their cover-up operations, in my opinion, to conceal or misdirect or delay or refuse to investigate fraud in the state. Now, one of the ringleaders, of course, of fraud cover-up is Bob Ferguson. And if you think that Bob Ferguson's happy with me right now, he probably will be even less happy with me moving forward. But just a quick reminder, here's what Bob Ferguson has had to say about me in the past. And it never gets old, so for some reason I just enjoy playing this. So enjoy about a minute of Bob Ferguson being pretty angry at the host tonight.
A right-wing Republican, Glenn Morgan, known well to many of you, I suspect. We know Glenn Morgan was recently awarded the Volunteer of the Year by the state Republican Party. That's Glenn Morgan. And again, Glenn Morgan's politics are well known to any of you who follow local politics. Glenn Morgan, and Glenn Morgan. Glenn Morgan's the Glenn Morgan. Glenn Morgan is Glenn Morgan.
So there you have it. Bob Ferguson is not too happy with me most of the time, and he'll be even less happy with me moving forward. And that video was basically a compilation of one of his press conferences from 2024. Anyway, I don't know. It just never gets old. So let's jump in here to some of your questions. And the first question I have here is from Glenn Vanderwell. Glenn Vanderwell 1547, and it says, and by the way, I know you did at We the Governed, you just misspelled it there, but you're saying, Glenn, there are so many bills being presented, and is this a normal amount? And I'm glad you mentioned something about that. This is a good question that comes up. So on average, any given year, there's usually, and remember, we operate on a biennium. So a bill that's, so would that mean every 2 years is essentially the legislative session. I mean, they break it into a long session, which is what we had in 2025, and then they break it into short session on even years, which are election years. And there's some very clear reasons why they do it. I mean, thank God we live in a state with a part-time legislature. A full-time legislature would be insane, and it would be horrible, and it would be far worse than it is right now. So be happy that we have a part-time legislature. But the long session, which is the 90-day session that they do in last year in 2025, basically that's when a lot of these bills get proposed, they die, they don't make it through, and so they do roll those bills over technically into this year, and then they pile in a bunch of new ones. Now, let's just say you're in that 3,000 or 2,500 sort of range for the number of bills that are proposed. They avalanche the bills in usually early because that's their best way to avoid getting cut off in committee if they don't see it. There's a series of cutoff dates that the calendar's kind of relentlessly moving forward. forward. And so as they pass cutoff dates, so does it get out of committee? And if it doesn't, it dies. Does it get out of appropriations? And if it doesn't, it dies. Does it get out of both houses so that they can reconcile it with the other one, or out of one house and reconcile? If it doesn't, it dies, right? I mean, there's all kinds of ways these bills die. So the majority of the bills you're seeing proposed, the vast majority of them, they will not land on the governor's desk. They just won't. That's the way it is now. That's the way it was last year. That's the way it has been for the last 120 years of Washington state history, give or take. Now, obviously, they propose a lot more bills in modern times than they did 100 years ago. But the majority of the, let's just say out of the, if for round numbers, about 3,000. I haven't looked at the number of bills that they've proposed this year cumulatively, but I believe that we're in that high 2,000 range at this point in time. I hope I'm correct when I say that, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. So the answer to partially this question, is it a normal amount? Overall, it is. People seem to, they have amnesia about what these sessions are like, because every single session that I've ever seen, and I've been paying much more attention the last 15 years, the first rush of early bills and that first month of bills, there's an avalanche of bills, all kinds of stories. The craziest bills are the ones that get attention, of course, and that's what happens. And then as the session goes on, it kind of drops off, and then there's a handful of dumb ideas that end up landing on the governor's desk. Every now and then there's a unicorn where there's a bill that comes out that's actually decent, but since the Republicans lost control of the state Senate a number of years ago, there are fewer examples of that in recent times. Most of the bills that actually get out are relatively non-controversial bills, renaming a park somewhere or some minor tweak in the RCW, Revised Code of Washington, somewhere along the way that doesn't have a big event. The reason why those tend to get through a little bit easier is that if they're a common sense reform and it's just a little thing you don't ever hear about in the news because they're boring and they're relatively minor tweaks, that's the majority of what actually gets signed. And then you have these marquee virtue signaling bills that you're going to be hearing about in the news. And they're on both sides. Listen, the Republicans have proposed some good bills that probably won't get hearings or go too far through the legislative process. The Democrats at this point in time are generally blocking the Republicans from having those bills heard. And so then you also have virtue signaling bills that, especially the hardcore leftists on the Democrat side, are proposing that are unlikely to go anywhere as well. I mean, one of the examples of that was Lisa Wellman's proposal to try to conceal daycare information from the public. That bill's dead. I mean, like most Democrats, she didn't bother to read the bill before she signed it. It was just probably dumped on her desk by a lobbyist or a staffer. Theoretically, the staffers aren't supposed to do that, but the lobbyist probably just wrote it for her, and she signed off on it without paying attention to it. The little dirty secret about the legislation is that, for the most part, very, very few legislators actually pay. They certainly don't write the bills, and most of the time, they, unfortunately, a shockingly high percentage of the time, they don't even read them. A lot of times, the Democrats are more aggressive about this, where they'll have a series of lobbyists, mainly union members and other groups, especially the grifting operations that want to profit from stealing your tax dollars. They'll write and pre-draft a lot of these bills and feed it through Democrat leadership, Lori Jenkins or Pete Pedersen on the Senate side. And so what they'll do is they'll have them and they'll just, they'll hand them out and they'll say, okay, you're going to sponsor this one, you're going to sponsor that one, and they're much more top-down control, which shouldn't surprise anybody. That is how the Democrats operate. You don't have to believe me. You can just talk to anybody that's actually had any access to what happens behind caucus doors on the Democrat Party side. The Republicans do that, the same thing to a lesser extent. There's a little bit more independence on the Republican side, and I don't know if that's just a function of them being out of power for so long in recent times, or if it truly is I'd like to believe it's a philosophical belief system that, at least on the Republican side, you have more people that are willing to look at this and read perhaps what the bill actually says and follow it and track it. Now, they have lobbyists that'll bring them stuff as well. It could be Farm Bureau bills, or I've written bills or helped write bills in the past through the Citizens Alliance for Property Rights, and then you get them sponsored. And so bills like that, and then they get proposed and they go into the soup, and in this case, the Republican bills are generally going to be pushed down. Every now and then you'll have a couple bills that there's some compromise and they're able to get forward, or there's some horse trading that goes on behind the scenes. And so the Democrats will allow a Republican bill to maybe have a hearing. But that's the kind of drama that is going on behind the scenes. Actually, what I'm seeing right now is not too different than what I've seen in the past. What I do see is a little different this time is that there's a lot of infighting on the Democrat side a little bit over what they think is what they were at least being told are like critical bills. And there's a lot of drama as they fight about them inside. The income tax one, for example, whatever proposal that's going to be, there's been a lot of drama and infighting about what that's going to look like. And yesterday I noticed that Jenkins canceled all floor action. So that meant there was some kind of fighting going on the Democrat side because the Republicans don't have any control over the calendar on what bills are going to hit the floor or not, or the timing of them. So we'll just see where that goes. Here's a question next question here. Bill Koth, any new 2A that we can't have additional this year? Well, any bill that a Democrat signs on to that has any relationship to firearms of any kind is one that you don't want. A lot of them are, as always, virtue signaling posture bills that do nothing. So I don't know. I don't have any off the top of my head. But basically, my presumption is any Second Amendment bill that's proposed at all by a Democrat, if they're even touching the bill, it's probably terrible. We used to have some pro-Second Amendment Democrats, not even that long ago, but we no longer have any that are like that. And so most of them hate the ability of you to have firearms to defend yourself, and they don't like our state constitution, and they certainly don't like the federal constitution. And they also have a billionaire constituency that is set up through every town for gun safety, or where these other groups are. And so they're basically set up to fund any Democrat that proposes an anti-Second Amendment bill, and whether they go anywhere or not. I actually haven't really heard of any of them making huge progress this cycle, mainly because there's not a lot of significance. Most of them are just bills that aren't terribly impactful at this point in time. Next question here, Tony AT1. Is there any chance of Washington getting a balanced government rather than the one-party rule? Most of the state has no voice. There is. It's going to take some effort in a couple of key districts. And frankly, even just flipping a couple of seats this next cycle would be important. I actually think that the Republicans need to dedicate, especially in Eastern Washington, focus on their Spokane district out there, where I think there's a chance that you could make a lot more inroads than recent election results have demonstrated. And you have one district that's the only Democrat district right now in Eastern Washington, right there in the third, which is downtown Spokane. And I know that it's been gerrymandered to be maximum benefit to the Democrats, but if that is a battleground district and you make it a battleground district, the city of Spokane has done a lot to demonstrate how bad local governance becomes when you let Democrats get in charge. Lisa Brown's mural disaster in Spokane is helping illustrate why you really don't want Democrats in charge of anything. Not just the state, but any city in the state. And as she finds ways to make it more miserable to live in Spokane, then, and especially with the contrast you have nearby of just going across the border and seeing the difference. Well, actually, you don't have to go that far. Spokane Valley is clearly a much better place than Spokane as far as how those two cities are right next to each other. And you really see Lisa Brown, former head of commerce, former state senator, totally corrupt to the core, absolutely unredeemable as a political person in any level or capacity of governance. And so having her having the opportunity to push back against that, and the two Democrats in the House and the Senate that you have there, and replacing them with somebody saying there's an opportunity there, and I think it's underutilized or appreciated by the Republicans on the east side of the state. Now, when you move to the west side, there's a number of key legislative districts that need a lot more invested energy and time. And what happens is most people that complain about this do nothing to help. This is what I've seen over the years. So the people that complain about government that is especially right now, we got a bunch of Democrats and a majority of Democrats in both the state house and Senate. I find that most people that complain want somebody else to do everything for them, and they don't participate in the process themselves, at least most of the time. And, when you're pointing at other people and telling them to do their job or help you by replacing the insane people with somebody sane, I would definitely encourage you to look at yourself and ask what you're doing. And are you influencing people around you to be more involved and participate in that political process? Are you hiding and cowering in the shadows and refusing to identify you're Republican so you're not influencing anybody else around you? Are you donating to political campaigns locally? Are you assisting in sharing out information to your neighbors and friends in the community about the ineffective corruption and dishonesty of the Democrats in Washington state? So look at yourself before you complain about other people. Now, for those of you who are participating and being engaged in this process, then find ways to be more effective and focus. I do think the 10th legislative district, which is Island County, a little part of Snohomish, and a little part of Skagit County up there, that actually is a good district and worthwhile district to put some resources and energy into that fight. I do think that the 26th ledge district as well, which is it's slightly part of Pierce, mostly over there in Kitsap, that legislative district, that's another one where we've had a split district there recently. The Democrats have recently succeeded. It had been Democrat in the past. Republicans took it over. Then it went back to Democrat. We really need to focus on some of these districts and run real campaigns. Most political consultants, unfortunately, in Washington state are egregiously incompetent, wasteful, have no idea what they're doing, and they're good at taking your money and achieving nothing. Homegrown operations, still, if they're run professionally, will probably be superior, at least in how you use the dollars. But it also takes a lot of work. It isn't going to happen by osmosis or imagination, and it's not somebody else's problem. It's yours and mine. So we have to find solutions there. North Whatcom, which is the 42nd, I think it's also a vulnerable district for the Democrats. Again, if we have serious campaigns up there, I still think the peninsula has a lot of potential out in the less than the 23rd than the 24th, which is the top part of the peninsula. You're going to see a lot of fighting in Snohomish County legislative districts. There's a number of them there. A lot of fighting in Clark County districts where the Republicans have most of them, but they definitely have a split district down there. I believe it's the 17th. And so you'll see a lot of energy and time justifiably go into those districts. And we also have to pay attention to, I think, some of the King County districts that have flipped Republican in the recent history, just a few years ago. The 30th in Federal Way, the 47th in East Hill, Kent. The right people stepping into some of these races can make a big difference. And one of the things that Republicans repeatedly seem to, certainly leadership is never aware of or pays much attention to, is that we need people running, even in some of these districts where it doesn't look like there's a lot of chance, who are serious, who didn't just wake up one day at the last minute and decide to run, but they're willing to genuinely run a real campaign to provide an alternative on the ballot and to convince the Democrats to spend money in those districts. It diverts money away from them just concentrating into the 6 battleground districts they're going to look at around the state. I expect the Democrats will throw a bunch of money again into the 14th legislative district out in Yakima. The Republicans generally have done a very good job getting that organized and preventing the effort of the Democrats to commit vote fraud and to redistrict and do all the scams that they've been trying to do in Eastern Washington to get another Democrat seat over there. And so holding them off, that's a pretty important thing to do there. There's a couple of other swing districts. I don't want to get into every single one right now, but there are opportunities. You do that and you start picking up some Republican seats, as I have seen us do before, and even including with all the problems that we have with mail-in voting, that we can start to make a difference, and just losing a few of those seats would make a pretty big difference for them right now. On top of that, I do believe the Department of Justice, for the first time in state history, looking at the egregious incompetence and stupidity of the Secretary of State's office and the state's restrictions on cleaning up the voter rolls, denial of vote fraud and vote fraud operations. Eventually, some of those federal cases, as they proceed, will eventually come back and impact Washington state. As much as Steve Hobbs wants to conceal fraud and hide everything and hide the truth, eventually that does catch up to you, and we just have to make sure we keep their feet to the fire. And as they try to conceal how incompetent and corrupt they are, eventually it does become more public. Let's see. Dominique's Car Imbolo 7389. When we find and compile evidence of fraud, or say a high likeliness of fraud, I'm filling that one in, of fraud. How can we? I'm assuming, how can we best effectuate change or get accountability from what we find? Excellent question. And this is right up my alley on with a lot of the training that we're doing with the Doge Washington. Part of the beginning of this was just to get more people engaged and involved, so they're actually out there doing something. Believe it or not, that's the hardest step, is organizing your team, pick a target, start to do the research. Very few people have done research. Very few people are looking at it. So I think the more that we can get people to do that, that's a big first step. Then the second thing is, okay, you've started to compile stuff. I've got a few video stories I'd like to do of work that's been done by local activists. A lot of them were just kind of compiling the documents so that I can explain it better to the public, so you can go replicate their experiences in Pierce County or Snohomish County or King County or wherever they're looking. But what happens after that, one of the things, it's okay to forward it to law enforcement, but for the most part, the state of Washington has structured itself both by policy, design, and neglect to protect and conceal fraud if it has to do with anything related to public integrity. Now, unless they happen to find that unicorn out there, right? They find a Republican that somehow got in charge of some element of government and they were corrupt, I think they might prosecute that person. But since most levers of power in Washington state are controlled almost comprehensively and thoroughly by the Democrat Party, they don't want to find fraud. They want to pretend like it doesn't exist. They want to deny it. They want to deflect from it. They want to hide it, kick it down the road, et cetera. That is what every single branch of Washington state government has dedicated itself to do right now. The Attorney General's office, with no exception there, I believe they're thoroughly and absolutely compromised on this. The majority of the judges in Washington state, they're also compromised. They owe their position usually to the governor's office and the political allies that the governor has, like the unions and the special interests and the grifting operations that profit from stealing and wasting your tax dollars. So most judges, not all of them, but most judges in Washington state are absolutely going to look the other way and look for any excuse to conceal and hide any public integrity investigation or case that might come before them. You might have some more leverage on certain types of civil cases. You might be able to find a way to navigate some of that corruption in the court system a little bit better. But for the most part, the prosecutors in our state are not going to do anything about it generally. Even Eastern Washington prosecutors who pretend to be Republicans, they generally look the other way. Guaranteed, the state patrol's not allowed to look into this stuff really that much anymore. So then it all comes back to who actually cares about public integrity in Washington state. And you're generally only going to find that at this point in time, surprisingly, with the federal government. Right now, I do believe there's some appetite with the Department of Justice and the FBI and other related agencies that are directly related to, like, some of the grant money coming in, Department of Ag looking into SNAP benefits, for example, whatever it is. And so you may find some corruption investigations that come through that space. Now, they still have to navigate the local federal judges in Washington state who are mostly corrupt too. And so you're not going to probably have resolution on some of that, the criminal investigation side of things and the fraud, until it gets up to like the appellate court or beyond. We do have a big problem in our judiciary in the state, but going public does help. And I think the public pressure right now, and you're actually seeing this in Olympia, enough public pressure is coming and exposing the DCYF cover-up, right? The Nick Brown immediately responding that he wants to arrest journalists rather than find fraud. Pat McCarthy, the state auditor, finally admitting that she hasn't looked in 4 years. And yes, there's a ton of problems there, but no, she doesn't plan to look again. The fact that Nick Brown actually made an announcement that he absolutely won't look at fraud. Bob Ferguson's decision to absolutely never look at fraud for the rest of his tenure as governor unless he accidentally finds a Republican stealing something. So they've definitely locked they're getting pressure now. And so to the point where even Pat McCarthy had to put up that statement on her website where some of the normally corrupted journalists in the state have decided maybe they need to look at something because it's becoming more and more absurd. If you are one of the foolish few who still read the Seattle Times and you actually think that they represent anything accurate, and you're wondering why do they not cover any of this stuff, or why are they always looking for an excuse to not report the truth? I think as this stuff begins to be exposed more moving forward, that you're going to find that pressure really gets on them. Carlene Johnson with Center Square as a reporter has just done a phenomenal job putting pressure on asking the legislators, the Democrat legislators, about the fraud that they're covering up and their refusal to look at it and their denial that it exists and attempt to shift the blame and shift it and blame somebody else. And it's putting pressure on them, and they're actually getting stressed out. And gosh, this is just a handful of reporters actually asking these questions and making the news stories out there and doing videos on it and getting some exposure. Just a little bit of that is actually putting pressure on them. It's slowing down and killing bills. It's making an impact. I think the more of that we do, the better off we're going to find. If you got something really, really big, make sure you let me know. But for the most part, getting exposed is important. Bring it to me. Bring it to Ari Hoffman. Bring it to Brandy Cruz. Bring it to somebody that's willing to tell that story and get it out there. Center Square is pretty good at that as well, and I think we'll get more of this stuff out there in the future. Corey Mosley 3534. What's it going to take to recall Bob Ferguson? Well, and the recall process, I know people keep bringing up impeachment sometimes. We don't have an impeachment process in the state, essentially. So that's not a legal avenue you can go down. People confuse the federal side with the state side. And a recall process in Washington state is different than it is in California, which is the other thing that people will oftentimes look at is, well, California does these recalls, why can't we? And it is an expensive and long, drawn-out process. So a recall is a lot harder than most people realize. Most people that will say they want to do a recall, especially at a statewide office, don't realize how long and how difficult that process is and how expensive it is. Your likelihood of success is probably 5% or less, maybe. You still have to prove misfeasance, malfeasance, according to the statute, or violation of oath of office. You'll never get an oath of office accusation to get through the court system. And remember, you have to get this basically accepted and approved by a lower court judge and by the Supreme Court, generally. And that's not that easy. If you want a model, a template model, if there is somebody out there who thinks they have $1 million laying around and you can pull off this recall, because remember, then you have to go get the signatures, assuming you even get that approved. And it's going to be a massive amount of signatures around the state. Collecting signatures for recalls are actually fairly easy usually in comparison to collecting them for initiatives, but it's still an organized, challenging, difficult process that if you and your 20,000 closest friends aren't prepared and ready to go and hit the ground on this running, success is not in your future. And you better have a decent budget to deal with both the legal fees of getting through that process and then the final drive to collect the signatures. I actually think Chris Reichdahl is probably the most vulnerable statewide elected office holder right now. And all these guys are going to be up for election in 2028. So Chris Reichdahl is probably the most vulnerable from a statewide recall effort. It could be that Pat McCarthy is getting close to that with her screwed up mess and with the history of just concealing fraud and hiding audits and not bothering to find anything with what she's doing. Those people are a little bit easier in some ways because they've established a history and pattern of bad behavior, incompetence, failures, all kinds of stuff. Bob Ferguson, in his current capacity, remember, you have to recall him for something he's doing as governor, not for something he did as attorney general, because he's holding a governor's seat right now. And so it's very difficult. Most people that want to do this haven't really thought through the process of why don't we just spend the time to prep and prepare a good candidate to run for governor in 2028, which means, by the way, that you're starting a campaign in 2027, at least, no later than 2027. And and look out there and see who else is probably planning to do that. Throw your weight and effort and energy behind them. People who start late lose early. So try to find a good candidate that you can get behind and see where it goes from there. Listen, I've done recalls. before. I'm probably one of the few people that's actually worked on organizing recalls, collected signatures for recalls, helped with the lawsuits behind the scenes for recalls. And it is not as simple as people think it is. And you can use that money and time most of the time more efficiently and effectively in other ways. Next question, Midwestern by the Sea. Do you think what is happening in Minnesota will impact our governor's current stance on dealing with ICE in Washington? Yeah, absolutely. The bigger change potentially in Washington, I mean, there's a couple things coming out of Minnesota, and I mean, many of you probably watching this show are aware of this, but number one, it does appear there's been some kind of a breakthrough between the federal government and the governor and mayor of Minneapolis, where they seem to be coming to more common ground and getting away from the more extreme behavior that we've seen recently by the crazies tracking and attacking ICE, and the confrontations, the violent confrontations that are occurring as ICE is generally removing the violent criminals. And what's interesting about that is if they really, I don't know what the behind the scenes conversations are, and that maybe this is a flash in the pan and it disappears tomorrow, but it does seem like that that they may be coming to some kind of interesting resolution. And if they do, it's interesting if that can be replicated here in Washington. Now, one of the things, you're not really seeing the same level of drama in Washington because most of the crazies and the violent leftists have focused their energies in Minnesota. So they've shipped a lot of activists out there. You saw, I actually think this is a pretty amazing thing that Cam Higbee did, where he got on the inside of those signal chats. Listen, those are, I think people don't understand how significantly concerning that is. The only way, that isn't activism anymore. Once you've got region district structure set up in a city with 1,000-person encrypted signal chats with duties and organization and structure, that I'm going to tell you that all the money the Republicans have in the state of Washington in a given year isn't enough to train a group to be effective enough like that at that volume, as we see witnessed in the exposure that Cam Higbee gave to what's going on out there. I am pretty amazed and stunned by what he uncovered with that and what it reveals about outside influence and financing of some of these more violent, confrontational groups that aren't protesting. They're out there to cause disruption and problems. And unfortunately, if you've seen some of my videos in the past and the concerns that I have raised over the organized nature of Antifa and some of the violent leftist groups that are out there, their effort to sow chaos and corrupt and destroy the system and take it all down, right, all around us all the time, that clearly shows the ability and evidence that you could easily do that with that level of sophistication, organized effort. Anybody that's participated in any military effort overseas where they're looking at counterinsurgency operations, they witness and obviously can tell when they're looking at that kind of a program what type of training that goes into that. I seriously doubt this is training that's homegrown entirely. It looks like it's had a lot of significant outside support and training to get it to be disciplined and organized like that. If you don't understand that when you see it, I'm sorry. I mean, you must have a sheltered worldview, because that's a big deal, and I'm concerned about that. If that type of an operation moves into the Seattle, truly moves into Seattle or parts of Washington state, I'm sure it's already in Portland, but if it really moves in and sets up that kind of an operation here, then we will have more violence here and more problems, and it's going to impact things. It's going to certainly allow the feds to have a good reason to dig in deeper and to see which foreign governments are behind some of the funding and training of this kind of an operation. It's pretty amazing, really. Bill Kosh, another question sort of related to the previous one. Any new 2A restrictions coming soon in Washington in 2026? Listen, stupid, dumb proposed bills are one thing. I'm not sure if there's any of them moving forward. So I'll have to look into it, and I will look into the Second Amendment bills. There's a question, Pat Caldwell, 5337. Is there a single location to find all the bills? Yes, at the Washington State Legislature, you can look at all the bills that are proposed in their website. It's a good point. I might try to do a quick video tonight, if I think about it, on how to comment or how to be more engaged and involved in this process. I did this once before, but I realized that there's always a few things that change sometimes between sessions, and I can give you more of an update and give you some examples of things you can do to look at it and to find some of these bills. Next question, Gabriel Garza, 5879. How do we go about voting judges out in hopes of bringing back balance? Yeah, I think this is critical. And I don't think people understand the significance that the judiciary will feel if we actually just field decent candidates to run against some of these clowns. Thurston County is thoroughly and comprehensively corrupt with no exception. Every judge in Thurston County has absolutely sold their soul right to the core bottom of it to protect the government. Every single Superior Court judge in Thurston County. None of them are going to be honest. None of them are going to be open to doing anything that's going to rock the boat of government in Thurston County. And that's important because Thurston County is a seat of government. So any case you bring against the state of Washington is going to end up in the Superior Court first before it goes up to the even more corrupted Court of Appeals and then the comprehensively corrupt Supreme Court. You have to run candidates against them, and I think the experience that they would have, and for judges hate running campaigns. They don't like it at all. They believe it's beneath them. They believe they're superior to it. There's a real nasty attitude that tends to come with a lot of these judges, especially if they've been appointed by the governor, which is most of them, and they feel beholden to the political establishment, and they don't think that what you think and what the regular voters think should be any influence on their future aspirations as a judge. They hate having to go to public forums or speak or run a campaign. They just really hate it. And so an insurgency judge campaign is really important, but you need to have people who at least have a bar license. They're just going to have a bar degree. Now, with the way that Washington State's gone down, treating whether you need a bar license or not to practice law in Washington State, they've opened up the door so that there might be an opportunity to argue that you don't. But believe me, they're only going to look the other way on lefty candidates. They're not going to look that way on a conservative candidate that's running against a judge. But we have to have the ability. We have to have people who are willing to step up and run. Most people are too intimidated to do that, and so everyone thinks it's somebody else's problem. And if you do have a law degree, you know that that there's a judicial mafia where if you do run against a judge, the judges in that same area will refuse to let you prevail in any court case moving forward, no matter what you're doing. So it's one of these things just to remember that it's a little bit more than just finding an attorney who's skilled and capable of running, but it's finding one that the judges can't use some kind of leverage over them, and that's hard. Retired attorneys are fine. Somebody who has a law degree but they're not working as an attorney is also good. But finding these people to run, vetting them ahead of time, recruiting them ahead of time, getting them prepared, and then running a real campaign to support them, it's a different animal. And frankly, the Republicans have egregiously dropped the ball overall culturally in this state, 30 years ago. And that failure, because they're nonpartisan, right, is a big mistake. No judges, there's a few Superior Court judges in the state that are sane and normal people, but very few of them, and the vast majority are not. And we have to start replacing some of them. Honestly, you don't have to replace them all. Just replacing some of them will start to, and having others that are threatened with political races, that starts to constrain their ability to be crazy. And so it's very helpful if we can do that. And it should start now, not 5 years from now, not wake up one day at filing week and realize you don't have nobody to run, but you start recruiting them in advance. T.Z. Burton, Supreme Court Justice Montana, is retiring, of course. This opens up a seventh appointment to the bench. All but 2 justices have been appointed. How likely is it a judge will ever be elected again? Again, going back to my previous statement, you're going to have to run legitimate candidates to run for these positions. This is the game the judges have played for a long time. It's an open secret. Many of us have talked about this for years. More people are talking about it now, which is good. And then we'll see where it goes. There's another question here. Jim Henke-KC70Y. Can you list the most conservative candidates? Where specifically? Because I don't know. And I don't even know what you're talking about exactly, because we're going to have congressional races, and most of the statewide races, there won't be anybody announcing that's serious for another 2 years, probably. Maybe in 2027. Generally, for the legislature, some people are starting to announce, but you have 49, well, that's not true, 98 seats in the state legislature, 49 Senate seats, not to mention county commission seats, et cetera, et cetera. What do you mean? Yeah, I mean, I could, but you'd have to give me a little bit more direction on that, and I would have to know. Sometimes I may not know everybody that's already declared. Let's see. Bill Koth. Bill, I've already answered that question a couple times about the Second Amendment, so let me know if I could. I think you just didn't. I didn't get to it yet, so you'd answered it, asked for it a couple times there. Dominique Carimbolo, 7389. Do you think we should try to organize a statewide business sales B&O tax strike? If we withhold as many taxes from the state as we can, we funding so much waste, which benefits nobody. I don't know. I mean, I've thought about that before, but I don't find that to be super beneficial because here's what happens. Everybody cheers it on. You get a small number of people that don't even have a significant amount of money that they're withholding. Department of Revenue freaks out, so they decide to crucify the handful of people that actually do it, and then they come out and pay a much steeper price, and they realize that they're alone, nobody else does it, so they feel like they're screwed. Listen, the closest thing you get to this is really the hundreds of thousands of people in mostly King County who have wisely decided that paying the car tabs after the state Supreme Court decided $30 car tabs wasn't a good idea, and they just stopped paying it, and the fines on that are relatively minor, and so most of them realize that the likelihood of them even getting pulled over for having expired license tabs is pretty low. I know people have been doing it now for 5 years, I believe now, since that last initiative. Ever since that initiative was shot down by the Supreme Court, I believe there's close to 250,000 or more, maybe about 300,000 people live in King County alone that have basically said, what's the point? And they aren't paying for the car tabs. And that's as close you're going to get to a tax revolt as you're going to see right now, and that is causing problems for Sound Transit and other places. But I don't know that a business sales or B&O tax strike really makes that much sense. Just like a property tax, same reason. I mean, 3 years down the road, the local county is going to be able to seize your property and auction it off. Now, you can change the law to make that impossible, but it opens the door to other issues. And so one of the things would be just getting some sane people in there who believe math is real, which means they can't be a Democrat, and then and starting to roll out all these stupid, dumb, bad ideas that they've had in there. Bill Koth's question, I like this one, Bill. Will there be a legitimate audit on the fraud from foreign visitors concerning daycares, et cetera? Yes, but it'll never come from the state. The Washington State Auditor's Office has all but admitted that they are basically a fraud protection racket. Pat McCarthy is going to do everything that she possibly can to make sure that nobody ever looks or finds anything at DCYF or DSHS or pretty much any other state agency that administers federal funds. At the most, they'll have a sternly worded letter that just says, hey, your controls suck and we can't figure out where this money went. That is about the best she will do. Mostly they'll just have gold star, good job for you, and like all audits, we'll ignore whatever fraud could potentially be there so we don't have to report on it. Clearly, you'll never get anything out of the Attorney General's office. Washington State Attorney General's Nick Brown's job right now is to absolutely protect and cover up fraud, just like Bob Ferguson. These guys, all three of these entities exist as statewide elected officials to protect and cover up fraud. This is their primary mission right now because exposing that fraud destroys their narrative. It exposes all kinds of problems with them when it comes to their political support system, political support structure. So there's no way these guys are going to uncover it. So the only way you're going to get this is, first of all, forcing the feds to dig into this so that they can figure out and get to the bottom of exactly what happened with this money. Now, the feds are going to generally probably want to focus on things that they can actually put somebody in prison for. But sometimes just the basic, hard, aggressive audit, figure out where all the money went, even if people don't go to prison, but they're at least exposing the total corruption that exists in these systems, will help us. Now, I'm not sure always the mechanism that they need to go to get to that point. And it's possible that there aren't enough auditors in America today to actually clean up all the state's problems that we're finding. And so to some extent, they're getting away with this just by the too big to expose situation where you've got so many people doing this. And then again, as I've mentioned many times before, and probably most of my listeners are bored of hearing me talk about, it's the distributed cost concentrated benefits dilemma that exists in basically public financing or programs anyway, which means that, and when I say that, I'm always referring to, imagine that you're one of these con artists that operates like a homeless project, right, of some kind. They're almost all cons, so very few of them are honest groups set up to solve the problem that they've written in their mission statement. Most of them exist to make the problem worse, and more importantly, to keep their own gravy train going. And so, how important is it to those people to keep that grant grifting operation moving forward? It is super important. It's the most important thing for them. That's how they're paying for their fancy homes, their great vacations, their fancy cars, the money that they're putting away in a Swiss bank account, whatever it is that they're doing in stealing your money. The campaign contributions that they're kicking through, either openly or hidden behind the scenes and the people, the ballot harvesting operations that they're running, whatever they're doing to ensure the gravy train keeps going. It's the most important thing for them. There's nothing they won't do. They'll commit crimes, they'll commit fraud, they'll lie, they'll cheat, they'll steal, they'll do whatever they can to keep it going. And if you step out as Joe Good Citizen and we decide, okay, we're going to expose that grant grifter right there, and we're going to put the pressure on them, you don't have the same motivation to expose them that they do to protect it. Now you care, right? Because you want to fix what's going on in the community. But what happens is you can't financially justify the impact in your own personal life with that correction, right? With taking away that money. The amount of money that any individual grant grifting criminal operation is stealing is probably a relatively small amount out of your pocket. It's $10 a month or it's $100 a year or whatever it is. That's like, if you really look at it personally, this is how much money I'm paying that goes into this grant grifting operation. Once it gets filtered and everybody gets their cut in government before it lands in the pockets of that fake homeless solving problem or the daycare that's not real or whatever it is. And so they'll fight tooth and nail to keep the millions of dollars flowing or the hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing, or to cover it up so you don't realize how much they stole. But you are going to find yourself in this battling against these highly motivated concentrated benefits recipients there, and you're a distributed cost person, right? To you, it's still a small piece. Now, you're angry about the fraud, of course, many of us are, but you don't necessarily have the same level of motivation, and they know that. So they'll threaten you, they'll attack you, they'll want to intimidate you and create noise and make you work extra hard to expose them under the fairly logical plan that eventually they'll wear you out and you'll go away and they can keep stealing the money. That's how it works. This is government in a nutshell. That's how it works almost everywhere. That's how Bozeman has their stupid downtown warming center, which is essentially just another grant grifting operation, no different, completely indistinguishable from what we see in downtown Seattle. That's why Missoula has the same thing. That's why the same thing's going on in Boise, and the same thing's going on in Rapid City. The same thing's going on in Austin and Oklahoma City. States you'd think that this would never happen in, it's happening already because they've watched it and modeled it in Washington, and they're just exporting it to those states. And so and it becomes the same problem. The people there rise up, they're mad, and they decide, it's not worth it, and they walk away. And because people have walked away in the past, they double down and keep doing this because it's an effective strategy. So to avoid the distributed cost, concentrated benefits dilemma, you have to really organize and be absolutely willing and committed that you're going to go all the way down on this con artist group and take them out. And when they're done and you've defunded them as they move around to try to do it again, that you keep closing the door on them. And maybe somebody gets arrested, maybe they flee the state, maybe they just decide that it's too much work and they can go steal money down in California, whatever it is. You just have to stay on top of it. I'm telling you, it's not as easy as it sounds, but it's worth it. And it's great fun, and I think we need to do more of that. But whether there's a legitimate audit I don't know. let's see. Somebody there's happy I'm irritating Bob Ferguson. Yes, that's been an irritation. I've been an irritation for him for a long time. Next question, Jason Fisher, 1530. Thanks for joining us, Jason. Question, evening, Glenn. What's your thoughts on Battleground School District running another ballot measure that wants more money? Is this a tactic that will allow it to run 3 times? Actually, that's pretty typical, and it should be defeated again. One of the things these school districts just don't seem to be, I think it's dawning on them a little bit, but defeating their bonds and their basically any of these whatever their M&O, whatever it is that they're running to try to get more money, defeating those is almost the only way that they can get a message that the community's not happy with their operation. And so they're going to try to punish the community by saying we're taking away the football team, or we're going to stop helping band. They'll pick the programs that have a constituency in their community. By the way, this is becoming a weaker and weaker argument because the public schools are doing such a terrible job educating the kids in the first place, and they're instituting these bizarre trans operations or programs or weird rainbow world wokester schemes, and the kids are getting lower and lower objective test scores, and so you're seeing a lot of kids go into homeschooling or shifting out down in Battleground. They have a number of private schools down there, so you're seeing the shift go on right now. And so the threats and attempt to hurt the community, which the school district clearly exhibits by trying to stop funding some of these extracurricular programs, that's usually what they do. It's the only way to ever get a message across. So defeating the bonds and the levies is really about the only message you can send to a school district anymore. Although going to the school board and continuing to confront them about bad behavior, I think, is also helpful. But at this point in time, I'm getting to the point where I think voting no on everything is probably the only option most of us have in the communities that we live in. There could be exceptions out there. You may have a school district that's actually run fairly conservatively, and maybe they deserve getting that M&O levy passed. But I don't think there's very many of them. And so we need to just see more people doing this in the future. I have to pop my chat up here a little bit better and see if I can catch up on some of these questions. There it is, pop out chat. I think what happens here sometimes is that, there's a whole bunch of them. Okay, let me catch up to where I was before. Okay, next set of questions. Are we the next Minnesota? This is a question from Noon Ishir 07. Yes, we could be, but I don't know for sure. It could be California that they jump on more aggressively than us. But anything that happens in California and Oregon is going to reverberate up to Washington. Same with Colorado a little bit, but anything that happens in those 2 states will definitely affect us quite a bit as well. Michael Case, 8231, since a conservative isn't likely to get a good political consultant, is there any direction you can give for people looking to change that, get good education on running a campaign? Yeah, and good question. I mean, the challenge, and I know I sound like I'm really anti-political consultant, and that's because I generally am. But one of the problems that you see with political consulting, so put yourself in the shoes of a consultant, and they're tight, they're pinched, and it's a challenge, and it's a weird job, right? And it's not an easy job, by the way. I don't think people should think it's easy. It isn't. But you only get paid. Essentially, you're going to make more money every 4 years and more money every other year, and on those years in between, you make almost nothing. So coming up with a side gig, so you're only doing it part-time, probably reduces your effectiveness and knowledge about what you're doing. The basic mechanics of running a campaign are pretty straightforward, and they haven't changed a lot. There's some techniques and things you can focus on, but because consultants have this weird income stream that comes in, they spend a lot of their time undermining each other so that the handful of races that they have left that they can get in, and remember, they get paid whether you win or lose. So for the most part, they don't really care. They sign you up, and then after that, their motivation is very limited in ensuring that you win. They are oftentimes pretty decent at getting you out of a primary, and then after that, they fall off the radar and disappear. And they're trying to, also they're trying to get a bunch of candidates in at the same time. So that's how you make enough money, is to survive as a consultant. So plain devil's advocate, that's a significant problem if you're a political consultant. The other challenge, of course, is that there's a lot of people that decide to run for office, and this is, again, devil's advocate thing for political consultants, that have no business running for office. I mean, they've really done no homework, they've done no research, and for some reason they believe that somehow the fact that they said, I'm running for political office, automatically grants them an unusual level of attention and recognition, and that people are going to come in and do everything for them the way that they see it, I think, on TV, some Netflix special or something, where they romanticize what a political campaign looks like behind the scenes, when the truth is you won't have political campaigns that look like that at all. It's really about organization and structure, calendaring, and time management to run a political campaign. And a lot of people aren't very good at running for office, even if their resume would indicate that they're pretty skilled in other places. Despite the fact, a lot of people look at Donald Trump and say, wow, a businessman is who you need to have run for office. And I think that there's an element of that, certainly from practical experience. We want people like that running for office with that background. But they oftentimes don't understand the political process at all. They're terrible at communicating with people. They don't like people, so they don't doorbell. They can't reach out and really have that personal connection that I think you need in order to be good at it. And so you'll have people come in and they think their consultant's going to do everything for them. Consultants don't mind them thinking that, because they don't care if they win or not. So they're used to seeing people that are totally unprepared and have no idea what they're doing. And so there's a lot of trust that gets handed over to them. And then the consultants give them whatever recycled story was they gave the last guy, and failure is kind of in their future. I mean, it's success is a rare outcome outside of that. If you've done your homework as a candidate and you've looked ahead and you recognize that you're a good fit, you're prepared, you've built your resume, there's a reason why you're running for office and it makes sense, you're connected to the community you're running in, then you're starting ahead of about 85% of the other people that are deciding to run. And after that, the mechanics is more about campaign management and less about whatever pointless consulting that you might get. You need to hire people that are capable of doing the day-to-day stuff. That's the main thing. And it does take money to do that well. It's very hard to find dedicated volunteers. Remember, before you declare that you're going to run for office, 95% of the people who make you promises, they're lying. And they aren't necessarily intending to lie, but whatever their promises are, they won't come through. They won't give you the money that they said they're going to give you. They won't provide the energy and time and support that they said they were going to give you. All those promises vaporize. And that's what creates a lot of bitter political candidates. Is they had a naive expectation that all these promises they got ahead of time were going to materialize when they get out there on the doorbelling world, or they're at the campaign, and suddenly on that Saturday morning and they show up at the Starbucks and it's just them and their one volunteer, and they're supposed to doorbell 500 homes that day, which won't happen, right? It just becomes difficult for people to understand what the dynamics are when you run. And listen, I ran for office. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've helped a lot of people run for office. I've seen this, that I don't really see anything new too often, so it's mostly the same story over and over again. Republicans who win are able to pull themselves up mostly because they've organized their own bootstraps and campaign a bit ahead of time, didn't rely a lot on political outsiders, and they had a good story and reason why they were running, and they were tied into that community in some way. They're more likely to prevail. If you've never run for office, and I don't care if you're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, running for Congress is mostly insane. You have no business doing that without having developed some background and preparation running for it. If you were looking at somebody who could run for governor, look at Brian Haywood and all the work that he's done as a business guy. Now, there you have somebody who'd have a good story to run for governor. That's unusual. I haven't seen that very often before. It's a good resume. You've built up a lot of connection, a lot of fighting, a lot of in the trenches work year after year after year after year. Pretty soon, somebody like Brian Haywood would make a pretty good candidate on paper running for governor. I think that most people would probably support that kind of a profile. Otherwise, you're looking at standard traditional politicians for the most part who have built up a reputation around the state. You have to look at this from a practical standpoint. I've done classes on this a little bit before of what makes a good candidate to run for office. It's not, I don't find that terribly unique. Other people have done it as well, but it takes a bit of training to get people to kind of shift their mindset out of whatever experience they've had in the private sector, which granted should be better and more important, but it's still difficult. Sudell 160, I think. To slow down frivolous and grossly complicated bills, can we make all proposed bills be handwritten in legible American English? Yeah, no, you couldn't, but I like where you're coming from. Question, TZ Burton. Wadi Yakur is running for office against Perez in Washington 3. Do you know him, and will the state Republicans back him? I don't know him, and I just don't know him. So, and running for Congress, if you're an unknown person running for Congress, you have no business running for Congress. I don't care what party you think you're in. Run for school board and demonstrate you can run there first. So AI Mongrel, Glenn, I bitch a lot, and my wife and I are way more involved than most who claim the label Republican, quote unquote, by working our activism through our local government by engaging them. Thank you. It's not a question, but I appreciate your involvement. Let's see. Jason Fisher, 1530. Question, is Sideshow Bob's budget cuts heading for the shredder? Will we see more tax hikes this session? Good question. I actually am not sure now. I was pretty convinced they would try to I figured in the beginning, normally you don't have tax hikes right before election season. They just don't. Historically, the short session isn't when they put through a tax increase. When the budget started cratering over after the last session, when they did have a big, huge tax increase, then you're wondering where they're going to get the money. But the truth is, the amount of money the budget is cratering isn't enough. They can pull that out of the rainy day fund or other kind of piles of cash they have laying around. So a lot of times it's easier to kick the can down the road politically. I'm not sure that our Democrat political class is quite in that mindset yet. They might be getting there quicker than we think just due to outside pressure with more exposés about the fraud and corruption that they're covering up right now. So I couldn't tell you if you're going to get any more. It's very possible, despite the proposals, that you see no more tax increases this cycle, and then it keeps going forward. Somebody mentioned here about Carlene Johnson doing some really fantastic work. I couldn't agree more. I talked to her at Roanoke. She was there, but I told her that. She's just an amazing, doing really good journalism, something that nobody who works for the Seattle Times knows how to do anymore. Let's go down here. Sorry, there might be more questions. I'm trying not to miss anything. What do you think? Okay, here's a question. Not economically viable. That's funny. Let's see. What do you think about Thurston County and Pierce County sheriffs beefing? Kind of scary being around that kind of turf war. Listen, I don't. People are going to argue and get back and forth. I don't think that's politically wise or personally good use of time, but especially when the threat against both of them is coming from the same source. So I wouldn't waste my time arguing with others. But anyway, that's just how you can't control what other people do. And by the way, I actually, both sheriffs, I get along with them well, and I actually think they both are actually doing a pretty good job in their respective counties, despite all the drama and the effort that's going on in Pierce County by the libs to take that guy out, and despite the fact that Sanders is going to be, whether he realizes it or not, the left will come after him too. So it's just an interesting dynamic, and you prefer people not to fight each other, but you can't stop them. Moss and Ferns, this isn't a question, though. The paid family and medical leave tax went up again this year, along with benefit payments. The state does not enforce the law requiring employers to report and pay premiums. I didn't know that. So that's interesting. Next, I don't have an answer. That wasn't really a question, but thank you for letting me know. W3105, when are people going to truly wake up? I feel never. Listen, it's different for everybody. Once you've woken up and you've red-pilled yourself or maybe black-pilled yourself, or at least woken up and realized there's something wrong, the natural human tendency is to look around you and wonder why everybody else doesn't see the world the same way. And you should really put yourself in the shoes of where you were before before you did recognize there was something wrong, and understand that that actually is what these people around you don't think have woken up yet. That's the world they're still living in. Obviously, you get 15 to 20% of the population that's just they've been spun up on doom scrolling and social media. They're controlled and manipulated to the point where they're probably entirely delusional. But even those people sometimes break out of it when something happens to them in the future. You can't scream and yell your way out of it and argue at all. But eventually, they oftentimes come around to it in their own way. Sometimes it's a financial impact in the future. Sometimes it's seeing what happens to your kids. Sometimes getting mugged by that 75-time felon that keeps getting released. Who knows? But when their worldview gets changed or impacted by reality, that's usually when they change. Army Wife, Seattle, 1776. When judges and some candidates come up on ballots, I can't find information which informs my votes. Is there a conservative source that you can recommend? And thanks for all you do. Not consistently, and I wish I could say differently. There are a number of conservative groups around the state that have tried to rate candidates a little bit better. The truth is the most effective, best funded candidate rating operation is the Progressive Voters Guide, which means you simply vote against them, right? So whatever they say is good, you vote the opposite, and that's a safe benefit. If you don't know anything better, always read them first and see what they say, and then vote the opposite way that they're recommending you vote. So let them spend the money to vet and identify all the crazy leftists, and then you vote against them. Let's see. Moss and Ferns. This means the state. Okay, there's another question here before this. It's not really a question. It's just W3105. You're saying independents need to have a voice here. Well, I'm going to tell you the independents' only opportunity for a voice is going to be in the Republican Party right now, because there is no voice in the Democrat Party. In fact, the Democrats are driving another wedge inside their own party right now, where they're chasing out anybody who believes math is real, who think women exist and they can be defined, who support girls' sports. I mean, pretty crazy divisions that are occurring over there. And so those people become independents. But remember, if you want to have an influence, you're going to have to be involved on the Republican side of it. We have a top two primary system. True independents don't survive the jungle primary system as a general rule. So anybody left of insane, anybody right of insane, is going to have to be kind of recognizing that you may not agree with everything on this side of the political spectrum, but it's like the Democrats who voted for Rudy Giuliani in New York. At a certain point in time, you just need to. You may not like the party, but you need the candidates and you need some level of sanity coming back in there. Let's see, Moss and Ferns, and I'm assuming you're responding to what you said before. This means the state pays out benefits to people who never pay into the system. How do we get ESD to enforce the law? Great question, and that is a question that I would definitely start to bring up. If you have good evidence of that, that is something that's probably worth bringing up and discussing. That's actually a good topic. So anyway, let me know. TZ Burton, you corrected it where you said 600,000 now. Yeah, I think that's right. I saw that on Ari Hoffman's post when he's referring to the number of people that haven't paid car tabs. And by the way, it's mostly concentrated in the area. Like where I live right now, the car tabs haven't gotten that high. I'm in South Thurston County. But if you live in the RTA zone, mostly King County, but I think it goes up into Snohomish and down into Pierce a bit now, the car tabs that are added, the increases that are added by the stupid Sound Transit scam make it absurd, right? You're paying $500, $800 now for car tabs. So not paying your car tabs makes economic sense up there, and it has become a protest, and I think that it's interesting. And I do think it's funny the Democrat senators have noticed, and that was the goofy weirdo senator up there in the 21st. Mark, it's Elias, right? Senator Elias. He said, he has that bill that it proposed a $569 fine for not getting the car tabs up from whatever it is right now. The funny thing, these are the same Democrats who refuse to enforce the law ever when it comes to violent criminals. They want violent criminals. You can kill somebody. They want to release you out on the streets as soon as possible. You can rape a child. They want to put you back out on the streets as soon as possible. Mark Elias specifically, actually, that senator will happily take the most violent, horrible criminals with 75 convictions and put them right back out on the street tomorrow. But by God, you don't pay your car tabs. That's what he wants to enforce. It actually truly merits a lot more attention. And I see that somebody else mentioned that down here. TZ Burton, Pam Bondi is on it with stern letters. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are not happy with how slow the feds have been at doing any of these investigations, and I don't blame you for your frustration. Yeah, we have Dogewa as our only hope, Obi-Wan. Well, I hope so. But listen, the funny thing, I don't think people understand this so much. You got to put yourself in the shoes of like your typical corrupt Democrat and the bureaucrats and grifting operations that exist underneath them, and that kind of feed, they create that feeding frenzy. The thing that they fear the most is public exposure. They don't care about your lawsuits. They don't even necessarily care that much about investigations. They might be a little concerned about federal investigations only because they've turned Trump into this all-seeing boogeyman who exists everywhere. And so the Trump derangement syndrome probably feeds into the paranoia. And so a federal investigation actually does have bigger impact than I think people realize. But generally, their biggest fear is public exposure. That's where Doge, Washington, and just generally this independent media that's growing out here right now, you're never going to see the traditional media anymore expose anything about government. King 5 News, they're gone. Seattle Times, they're irrelevant. Spokane, the paper, and Tri-City Herald, come on. I mean, these guys are totally useless. They just don't even exist as real papers. Now, I understand momentum, history, they're still kind of trudging forward, but nobody's going to go to there to get any kind of breaking news. You're seeing Como shift a little bit where they're trying to report on some of this stuff. I think there are some reporters that are recognizing if they don't pay attention to this stuff that their media enterprise they're working for won't have a future. But mostly it's going to be the Brandy Cruzes, the Cam Higbees, the Jonathan Cho's, Andy No, Ari Hoffman, Jason Rantz. Any of the stories that we get out there independently of the media, of course, with a lot of friction and resistance by that media, those are the stories that are going to be making the news and ultimately exposing the truth about what's going on. And I think some of these people are fairly focused on recognizing that getting exposed that way is going to be what matters to them. And independent journalists are not going to stop. There was somebody in there making a comment on that, and I agree. Let's see. Okay, here's another question down here. This is Bill Koth. You've been jumping on with some good questions here. I live in Skagit County, and my great-grandsons, aged 13 and 15, have been mocked by teachers for being Christian. They ask how to respond to get legal action, and they have tried and no effect. Well, the legal action is the last step. The first step is really open and public exposure about the teachers by name, who they are and what classes they are and what they're doing. It has to start there. I don't think people understand this. Listen, these guys are much more afraid of a viral video coming out and exposing the truth than they are of the next 100 lawsuits you file. Because it's not their money. They don't care. A lawsuit just delays inevitability. It actually protects them. Public exposure is much, much harder, and that's what you should be focused on, not the dumb lawsuits. Let's see. I'm trying to get down here. Somebody's saying here, might be an unpopular opinion. This is Moss and Ferns. Might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm so sick of conservatives who bitch and moan and do absolutely nothing. Well, yeah, people who do nothing don't matter. They just are irrelevant. They're not going to be part of the solution. They're not going to be part of the equation. What they think doesn't matter. They're irrelevant. And that's the thing people have to realize is if you aren't engaged and involved in actually trying to do something, what you think just doesn't matter. The left figured this out long ago. That's how they're able to take a very small, microscopic percentage of the population and have outsized influence with totally bizarre edge issues. Now, what they eventually realized is that was exhausting and tiring, and so they built these grifting operations so they could fund the crazies so they could keep doing it, and that's why cutting off the money should be one of our highest priorities. The Highway 3000, what are the major hurdles of getting a real-time, transparent, and accountable government, i.e. open-source government? The government and the bureaucracy and the grifting operations that profit from the current system is your major That's your major hurdle. They profit from complexity. Complexity gives strength and power to those who have no interest in exposing the truth and who profit from the way it currently exists. And so therefore, they're going to resist every effort that you might have to potentially expose it. That's your biggest hurdle. John Curry, 3641. Do you think there will be consequences for the state and local officials in Minnesota that were caught in the Signal chat scandal? Good question, and I don't know. And it sort of depends. I mean, that Signal chat scandal is a huge deal. And you're right that it did expose several paid public officials who in theory are supposed to care about public order and the truth, and they're involved in this weird counterinsurgency organized guerrilla operation in the community. I think it's going to be a big deal, but we'll see. Public exposure, though, is more important than the next 75 lawsuits that people want to file about this stuff. It's the start that crashes everything. Public exposure. You can't unsee what you see, and the more people who see it, the better off we are. Jason Fisher, 1530. Question, what's your thoughts on C-Tran? Is it effectively run? How often do they want tax increases? A lot of buses I see are empty. I heard crazy stories from riders about crazy riders. Listen, no, C-Trans run poorly. They aren't run efficiently or effectively. They are underwater. They know it. That's why they want to bring C-Tran across the river into Vancouver so they can basically shift some of the expensive costs associated with their failures and have taxpayers in Washington subsidize it. And so hopefully we're able to prevent them from doing that. Let's see. Mama Fisk, at We the Governor, what do you know about the talk that in 2030 we won't be able to use diesel fuel? Yeah, I think that talk died. I think there was kind of a dream and scheme under the green new scam about that, but that's done now, so that's not going to happen. Bill Koth, is it feasible? So this is another question. By the way, again, if you don't say at We the Govern, look at how it lights up there. It's just easier for me to see it. And I know I'm getting close to my self-imposed time limit here tonight. Is it feasible to develop an AI that is able to do the election solicitation by text and email and even an automated call with poll to help in an election? It may count for volunteers. Yeah, actually it is. And a lot of people do that. It's already been used now. So it does work. And I think it does help. Somebody here, Smoky Bo Peep, they think men can get pregnant, referring to Democrats. That's true. Many of them do, which is weird. Let's see. Here's a question. Sharon Milligan, 7560. Who's making the most money off the fraud? Wow, that's actually a good question. And actually, at this point in time, I'm going to kind of close with this question, but it's one that I think is worth answering. There's no one individual that's probably making the most money off fraud. I mean, we might be able to find a state champion, but for the most part, it's spread over different constituencies and con artist groups. Some of it's going to be organized crime because, listen, I don't even know why they bother at the private sector. The government makes it way easier to steal money from them and with no consequences. And in fact, you can see that you can actually get the senior political leadership like your state auditor, state AG, the governor, and the Democrats in both houses to cover up your fraud and make sure that nothing gets exposed. Not because they care necessarily about organized crime, but simply because they don't like the bad narrative that shows their incompetence and corruption in how they administer government. Plus, they don't want these stories to get out there because that would encourage people to vote against taxes or not support higher taxes, which they always want to have. And so because of that, I think organized crime probably has a decent slice of the tax dollars that they get out. Then you have the special interests. The unions are obvious, but the unions kind of have this self-perpetuating cash flow that they're able to extract through implied threats of violence and certainly power and control over people's career paths. And so they're able to take their cut, just like the mob, and continue to kind of promote themselves moving forward. Between those two, so organized crime and the unions, which is a little redundant when I say that, then you look at the more traditional grifting operations like your homeless industrial complex, the ones that aren't controlled by the cartels. These are just going to be individuals who have either been tied themselves into the political process, and that's going to be spread around, thousands of people who recognize it. Now, you'll have some straight-up grifters that aren't necessarily politically involved that recognize that they can come in and do this stuff. But and you may even have concentrations like you saw in the Somali community and elsewhere, but it's certainly bigger than just the Somali community doing this, right? It's going to be a lot more people. Bureaucrats certainly profit and benefit from the fraud. Senior-level bureaucrats in particular, because the more money that they can kick out the door with no accountability, the bigger the budget they'll have next year, more employees they can hire, the more they can increase their pay. And even if people will think, well, what's the, you had $10 million stolen over here for $5,000 of the value in the community, and maybe for a pay raise of $2,000 next year, is that really worth it? And every bureaucrat will say, yes, it is. Actually, it's totally worth it to them, because none of that's their money. The only money they get is the $2,000. So they're happy to destroy the community, squander your tax dollars just for that $2,000 raise. It's kind of unbelievable, but that's what we've seen when we look into this. And so there's a lot of that going on, and it's hard to necessarily nail all that down. Now, listen, it's a little bit later than I like to go. We're getting close to an hour and a half here on this live stream. I just want to thank everybody for joining me and asking a lot of questions. I know I didn't get all of them, but I tried to get to as many as I could. We are in the middle of the legislative session, lots of dumb, bad bills. I'll see if I can get a video produced tonight, probably launch in a few days, that shows a little bit more about how to be engaged and involved in this process of commenting on those bills, if I can get myself organized enough tonight to do that. But otherwise, I just want to thank you, everybody, so much for asking your questions, sharing this video with others. If you're watching this after this session is done, feel free to put the questions in the comment section below. I'll try to respond to you as quick as I can. There's a lot going on right now. I have to admit, I'm running around this whole state all the time right now, especially in session, with a lot of projects going on. So I hope to have more to talk about next week when I do the live stream, probably on Monday. Otherwise, I'll see you at next Tuesday's event in Olympia at the Capitol. Pie crust promises and all that. It is worth being there, showing up, because remember, as I always say, the future does belong to those who show up.